Hello, good people of YouTube. And at long last, the USS Laffey is in game as our next dockyard ship. Well enough, too. So the Laffey is a real steel historical ship. She is an Allen M. Sumner class destroyer. Today she is preserved at Patriots Point in South Carolina. You can check out that video right here because we did go visit her in real life last year, which is one of the reasons why I was so hyped about this ship coming to the game, because of course real steel historical ships are excellent, and then real steel historical ships that are still preserved are even more excellent in my opinion. It's so cool to interact and play these ships in the game and then go check them out in real life. Really puts a lot into perspective in terms of the scale and such of the ships, and it's just such a cool thing. But yes, the Laffey is in my port, as I just bought her through the dockyard. Now, the Laffey it's an interesting ship. This is essentially what myself and others really wanted to happen to the Johnston, what they did here with the Laffey in terms of her setup and such. We'll get more into that here in a moment, but yes, for sure, the ship definitely deserves to be a bit of a beast in game, considering she went through and survived the largest single kamikaze attack in history. I think something like 54, 55 planes were involved, and the ship did not sink, so that's cool. So, we're going to take a look at the Laffey in port today, go over her stats and features, and discuss whether or not I think she's worth the grind. Speaking of the grind, oh, that's a really pretty backdrop right there. Look at that. Anyway, before I get distracted again, the grind. So, this go round in the dockyard, there are 20 phases to this dockyard. 18 of those phases you can grind your way through, but you do have to purchase 2 of the phases either way. You can purchase two phases as part of a starter bundle, so you get a bit of a discount when you do that, which will have you dumping in about 10-ish US dollars into the game in terms of doing the minimum. And there's people walking around back there. What? That's new. Okay, Wargaming. Man, Still Hunters dying really gave them some budget, huh? Look at that. Anyway, but yeah, you have to buy 2 of the phases. You can grind out the other 18 phases to get to the Laffey. So for 10-ish dollar dues, you get the Laffey and all of the rewards that you'll see popping up on screen right now. And that's usually a pretty good deal. And, the fact that you get all these rewards, albeit this time there is not a midpoint free premium ship like there were in previous dockyards, but considering the amount of free stuff we're going to be getting in this update and the next couple of updates, that's kind of understandable. But you get all this and the Laffey as part of the dockyard, again, with you only having spent about 10-ish dollars in doubloons. But let's go ahead and talk about the Laffey and see if she is even worth that grind. So, Laffey, she's a Tier 10 special ship, which means she does get the Tier 10 economic bonus package, where you get a 50% buff to the credits and a 100% buff to your various XP incomes. Now, she's a Tier 10 special ship. She's not a Tier 10 premium ship. There are no Tier 10 premium ships, so you do not get a reduction to the service cost of the Laffey. So, while, yes, you earn more, you don't have that huge profit margin like you do on other true premium ships that are found at Tier 9 and below. For her exterior, you do get this default camo, which is the historically accurate camo. And you do get this more thematic battle-hardened camo, which is inspired by the fact that, again, she survived that kamikaze attack, which is, very nice. I like that they are still including these with the amount of planes she shot down, 20 of them, with the ships, and they're not making entirely separate ships for them like they're doing with the GQ Johnny and the Yamato Kai, so that's pretty neat. And I do like this more than the normal dockyard camos, which are the really flashy over-the-top ones, so this is pretty neat. But I'm also glad that the camo is actually, a camo, and there's not just, one shade of gray over the entire ship, the whole number slapped on the side, so good on you there, Wargaming. Alright, for the armor, surprise, it's a destroyer, so it has 19 millimeters of armor everywhere. Who would have guessed? Who would have guessed? Survivability, she has 18,500 hit points base. And for your main battery guns, you of course get the 6 127mm main battery guns with a 3-second reload time base. and a 180 time of 7.2 seconds, maximum dispersion of 108 meters, and a maximum range of 12.4 kilometers. The HE has a 5% fire chance per shell and does a maximum damage of 1800, and they can pen 21 millimeters of armor. The AP shell comes out the tubes at 2,100. I'm sorry, the tube, man, if it came out that fast, that'd be something. Sorry, the AP shell does a maximum damage of 2,100 and comes out the tubes at 792 meters a second. And she does get the burst fire mode. We'll talk more about that in a second, but you have 25 seconds of reload between the burst salvos and a 1 second interval between the shots, so that's a little crazy, and 3 bursts, like an M16A4. Alright, the torpedoes are exceptionally short range at 8 kilometers, although I guess that's not as short of range as some like the Soviet destroyers. Actually, they did push those out not that long ago. Anyway, 8 kilometer maximum range of the torpedoes, maximum damage of 17,900, 66 knot top speed, and they're detectable from 1.4 kilometers away with a reload time of 140 seconds. So very much close range torpedoes only. Depth charge, she does get depth charges and, of course, a set of the airstrikes as she is a destroyer. Let's go ahead. You see 2 charges, 14 bombs in a charge, so 28 bombs, depth charges total. 40-second reload time with those charges. We'll see what the pattern's like in game. AA, she has an A rating of 57, which means it's not even theoretical. So you get 11 of the single-mounted 20mm Oerlikon guns, 2 of the dual-mounted 40mm Bofors, and then 2 of the quad-mounted 40mm Bofors. And then the 127mm guns are dual-purpose, 5.8 kilometer AA range. Maneuverability gives us a top speed of 36.5 knots and a turning circle radius of 620 meters and a rudder shift time of 3.1 seconds. Concealment range of 7.4 kilometers base before you go and throw in your modules on it. And for a box of gimmicks, she does get DFAA in a separate slot, with a 200% buff to the continuous damage and a 300% buff to the damage of the flak shells. She does get the new American smoke generator as well. This is the same as on the new line of American destroyers, where you can use all of the time at once if you choose to do so, or you can split it up how you see fit. It's fairly selfish consumable. If you haven't seen my Osborne video, we'll talk more about it here as well. And you get 2 of the specialized repair teams. So these are the good repair parties. You get 277 HP back per second for 20 seconds. That's pretty hardy on a destroyer. And like we mentioned earlier, you do get the burst fire mode. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and put a module and commander build here on the Laffey. And I'll meet you guys right back here. Alrighty, so for the module build, I went with main armaments mod 1 because this is a main gun focused destroyer. This gives us a 20% buff to the chance of the main battery becoming incapacitated, along with a 50% buff to the main battery survivability, and a 20% buff to the repair time of the main battery guns. Does the same for the torpedo tubes as well. And then I went with engine room protection upgrade, which gives us a 20% buff to the risk of the engine becoming incapacitated and another 20% buff to the engine repair time. Does the same thing for the steering gears as well. Destroyers live and die by their maneuverability, and the less often that the engine and steering gears are down, the better. Then I went ahead and went with aiming systems mod 1. This gives us a 7% buff to the dispersion of the main battery guns. Nothing else in this module slot really made any sense. The turrets rotate fast enough already. Doesn't have great AA, so why try to build into it? And torpedo tubes mod 1, again, torpedoes are only 8 kilometers. Yeah. And then I went with propulsion mod 1. You could maybe go with steering gears mod 1 here as well. What this does for the propulsion modification, it gives you a 50% buff to the time it takes for you to get to full engine power when you're accelerating. And with the way that most of the American gunboats play, they're very close-in engagements. So the ability to, have the better acceleration to juke the shells and such, that's better in my opinion, but I could see going for steering gears mod 1 here as well. Either one. I'm going to try with the propulsion mod. I might change it up as we get into the evening. And then, of course, Concealment Systems mod 1, this reduces our detection range by 10%. And with destroyers, the ability to disengage is huge. So you want to be able to disengage when you want to. And giving yourself a better concealment range, that gives you the ability to disengage when you want to. So definitely taking that. And this one, I was very torn on this one. Gunfire Control System Mod 2 or the Main Battery Mod 3. Main Battery Mod 3 gives you an additional 12% buff to the reload time of the guns, which, yeah, you're getting the shells out faster, but when we're talking about a ship that already has a 3-second reload, it's not a huge buff, and you do have the reload. You have the burst fire as well. And, Gunfire Control System Mod 2 gets it out to 14.4 kilometers with the main battery guns, which is pretty far for the American shells, but of course there's cases where you may need to, reach out and tap someone at that range, or, trying to farm a battleship down or something like that, and that's outside a lot of the secondary range for, like, the, Libertad and the German ships and such, so... again, I can see either or. We're going to try with the range first, and we may come back and take main battery mod 3 and see how that does. But yeah, that's it for the module build. For the commander build through Halsey on here, of course, went ahead and took preventive maintenance. This gives us another 30% buff to the risk of our modules becoming incapacitated, including the steering gears and the engine. Again, destroyers live and die by their maneuverability, so we want to live for sure. And then we went ahead and took a last stand because if, that engine or steering gears does get knocked out, we want to make sure that they're still working at a reduced rate. That's what last stand ensures. So we can still move around a little bit at least when our stuff is broken. Demolition expert because, I like setting fires, so let's set some fires. Gives us another 1% buff to the chance of the HE shells catching fire. This wouldn't be, of course, the first 2-point skill I would go for. Definitely go for last stand first. Just had an extra 2 points, all right? All right, 3 points. Lots of decisions to make here. So we went ahead and took main battery and AE specialist to give us a 5% buff to the reload time of the main battery guns. I guess I could probably drop... You know what? Actually, I'm going to do that. Give me a second, boys and girls. Okay, I've changed some things. So we went ahead and we took main battery mod 3, which will give us a 12% buff to the reload time of the guns now. But over here on Halsey, I swapped main battery and AE specialist with main battery and AA expert. So instead, now we have a 20% buff to the firing range of the main battery guns, but now we have a 12% buff to the reload time of those guns. And we took Halsey's Grease the Gears skill, which gives us a 20% buff to the rotation speed of the turret to offset the debuff that we get to the rotation speed of the turret. So now we have a 2.6 second reload with a 6.9 second 180 times. So there we go. That's a little bit better in my opinion. But the range is now 14.9 kilometers. So we still got that 14-kilometer range. All right. Anyway, 3-point skills. Adrenaline Rush for a 0.2% buff to the main battery reload time, along with the torpedo tube reload time for every 1% of HP loss. So if you take damage, you might as well get something from it. And then Superintendent for an additional charge of our heal and DFAA, considering that we do get those improved repair parties. We definitely want more of them. And then Survivability Expert for an additional 350 HP per tier. So that's another 3,500 HP for the Laffey. And finally, Concealment Expert for a 10% buff to the detection range, again, on top of the other 10% buff for a 20% buff to our detection range. So now, the Laffey has 23,000 HP, and like I said, the guns now have a 2.6 second reload time and a 14.9 kilometer range. And torpedo, that should change. Maneuverability, our speed is 38.3 knots with the flag, and our concealment's now down to 6 kilometers. Alright guys, so I'm going to go ahead and take Laffey out into the game, and I'll meet you guys right here for a voiceover review of the Laffey. Alright guys, voiceover Sea Lord here, and oh boy, it's patch day for sure, and the matches I had throughout the evening certainly reflect that, and I believe the match that we're kicking off this gameplay review section with is indicative of how my night went. So, in the background match, as you'll see, I go to the cap, I'm trying to do American Destroyer things, and the CV just decides he is going to make it his sole purpose this entire match to just fly over me and just keep me spotted. Because I guess he has literally nothing else to do. So I'm pretty much almost being greased by the CV this entire game. So, yeah, considering that I don't really get to go dark in this match, and there's 2 destroyers actively trying to murder me the entire time. This should give you a pretty good idea of how tough the Laffey is, and tough indeed it is. And I guess that's one of the good things about having terrible match of the terrible match of the terrible match, and the enemy team and matchmakers seeming, to try and conspire to have you murder that match, is you really get to see how tough a ship is, and the Laffey is most certainly one tough ship. So, if you get the survivability expert skill, you get the health flag going, you get the healing flag going, your Laffey can go through quite a bit. And that is, of course, what Wargaming has stated the Laffey is meant to do. Go in there, punch things in the face, skedaddle away, heal up, and go back in. And definitely, there were a couple of instances where I was able to do that throughout the evening. But they were pretty far and few in between because of, again, the matchmaker and it being patch week. And, of course, with the Grand Voyage kicking off, there's a lot going on with matchmaker and in-game right now. So, yeah, pretty hectic matches. But, yes, definitely. I definitely got that vibe from the Laffey. And I quickly picked up that's how you really meant to play it. And some of you might be thinking, well, duh, Sealord, that's how Wargaming said it's meant to be played. Why don't you try playing like that at first, right out the gate? Because there's plenty of times where Wargaming will say, oh, this ship's meant to do X, Y, Z. But it's actually really good at 1, 2, 3. So, yeah, I just try to approach these new premium ships or any new ship with a bit of a, blank slate and just figure them out, right? But yeah, this is most definitely a cap contesting destroyer. A TLDR way to describe the Laffey is it's a gearing that traded its torpedo power for better guns with the burst fire mode, right? And shorter range torps are the trade-off, but you pick up the super hill and you lose the American smokescreen for the new American smokescreen. And that new American smokescreen, it's really meant for you just to pop it when you gotta get out of a bad situation, to, drop a little puff of smoke behind you, skedaddle out of there, and then turn it off the second you can. Because think about it, you get 1 minute and 20 seconds with it, which is so short. That's such a short amount of smoke to have on your destroyer. Keep in mind, that's it. That's not like per usage. That's, you get 1 minute and 20 seconds total. So you can use it like 20-second burst and get a couple of good, bursts out of it to break contact. Or you could, I guess, sit there in it for 1 minute and 20 seconds and you get one average smoke screen out of it, especially by American destroyer standards, right? So as the night went on, I just focused on, ambushing enemy destroyers, winning the gunfights with them, and then dipping out, healing back up, and going back in for more. And when I was able to do that, the ship was absolutely fantastic. In fact, I got to the point where I didn't even really use the smoke all that much. I would only really use it when I would get in, really tight situations when I needed to go dark, or in, as you'll see in this match, when it gets really chaotic later on in those situations. So, it's a pretty fun ship when you're able to use it in that manner. And keep in mind, too, when you're going in and punching destroyers in the face and pushing them out of the caps and taking those caps, that right there is what wins matches. There's a lot more to the game than the big number at the end of the match, right? And with destroyers like the Laffey and any of these destroyers that are, mainly meant to, fight over the caps like Rabid Chihuahuas, mainly fighting other destroyers, you don't really get the big impressive damage number by the end of the match, but you've had way more of a battle impact than, the battleship that sat in the back and farmed 200,000 damage and didn't really do much else, right? And another thing to keep in mind too is that, sure, that might be like only 80 or 90,000 damage on your screen at the end of the game, but that's probably 80 or 90,000 damage that was primarily done to destroyers. And the way that the game rewards you is that it's the damage that you've done versus the total HP of the enemy ship. It's proportional. So, if you farm 1,000 HP off of an enemy destroyer, that's like farming, what, 10,000 HP off of a battleship. If you sit there and you eat an enemy destroyer for 19,000 HP, that's all of its HP. That's the exact same thing as if you sat there and farmed a GK down for its 118,000 damage with the flag worth of HP. So keep that in mind as you're playing the Laffey and any destroyer that's played in this manner. Now that's not saying the Laffey can't farm. It can most definitely farm. Definitely by the late game, because hopefully by the time you get into the late game, you've taken care of the destroyers on your flank, and your team, if they're being, well, good little boys and girls. They should have taken care of the cruisers that were trying to murder you in the process. And now you have the battleships left at the end of the match, and then you sit back there, farm them, set fires in their superstructure, pin their superstructure, so forth and so on. You'll have a nice little bit of damage done by the end of the match, if you get to that point. Obviously, with the way higher tier games go, don't really get to that point too much anymore. I certainly didn't throughout the night. These games were entirely one-sided. Just about every single match we had, I don't think there was a situation where the team that won had more than like 2 or 3 ships sunk by the end of the game. So it was pretty bad is what I'm saying. But I definitely, the Laffey's good is what I'm saying here. It's a very, very good ship. And the torpedoes, surprisingly enough, 8 kilometers when you're, getting up in enemy destroyers' faces, that's still quite a bit of space to work with. It's conveniently enough to get from one side of the cap to the other side of the cap in most cases. And, when you are in the cap and you're, doing things and the enemy team starts to push into you, when they're at, 9, 10 kilometers away and they're full W keying into you, you can launch those 8-kilometer torps, and by the time they get to that enemy ship, the enemy ship's probably traveled those, 2 kilometers to get within that 8-kilometer range of your torpedoes. So they are surprisingly useful. Now, I wouldn't be going out and using them as my main source of damage income. No. That's definitely what the guns are for with the Laffey, but they're a nice, tool to have in your belt. You can toss toward the enemy ships that are running at you, or, at the edges of the caps where the enemy destroyers will be probably trying to come in from. So it's surprisingly useful, definitely. So, burst fire mode, fantastic to be used as like a killing blow. I would not use it as my primary firing mode, because you get that 25-second reload time after that. And if you goof up that shot, you're gonna be standing there like an idiot, because now you have a battleship reload time on your 6 5-inch guns, and the enemy destroyer has half a minute to just whittle you down with their gun. So I would wait until the enemy destroyers at around 8-9k damage, because if you land all 6 shots, all 3 salvos onto the enemy destroyer, that will be more than enough to knock them out at that point. So definitely wait for that 8,000 HP point. Flip on over to your burst fire mode, burst the enemy destroyer down, take him out of the match, and then, if you can go dark, take the cap, back up, pop one of your super heals, and get back in the action. So that's kind of the gameplay loop for the Laffey. I really enjoy it, and she is definitely worth it in my opinion. Again, you only got to buy 2 phases out of this dockyard, around $10 for this ship and all the goodies that you get in the dockyard. So 125% worth it in my opinion. Real still historical ship. It's a real life preserved museum ship today, so definitely high marks for me for the Laffey. But speaking of numbers, what number would I give the Laffey? I'd give the Laffey a 9 out of 10. This is a fantastic ship. The guns are great. The burst fire mode's fantastic. You get that super heal to help you get in there, be aggressive, get in the enemy DD's face, and take him out. This is the type of destroyer gameplay that I do very much enjoy. You get DFAA, which, if you're harassed by the enemy CV for most of the game, you'll shoot down up 60 planes if it's a Richthofen, apparently, from my experience here. And on top of that, the torpedoes are, again, surprisingly useful. Get that super heal. And for the negatives, I would say the short burst smoke, I would have rather them had just given it the British destroyer smoke, rather than this new style of smoke, or maybe not even give it the smoke at all. Replace it with an engine boost where you can get out of the action that much faster. I know they wanted to kind of tie it into the American to the new line of American destroyers, but when you have such a small amount of smoke on such a high tier ship, it's just kind of like, what's the point, really? So again, either giving it the British smoke or replacing it with the engine boost, I think would have been a better call. But I guess it's still useful, but not as useful as I feel like it really should be for a tier 10 ship. Either way, ship's very good, very much worth your money. I'd highly recommend you grind out the event and buy those 2 bundles. If you haven't started just yet, you can buy the starter bundle. You can buy the one for 2 slots, and there you go, you're done. You can grind the rest of the event. And with the Grand Voyage and the 10th anniversary event coming very soon, when the Grand Voyage started, when this patch went live, you're going to be playing this game probably more than enough to just casually grind through the Laffey missions. Maybe we'll have to focus on a little bit of the later ones, because it is a tier 10 ship, so those later missions are going to be a little bit more difficult. But again, with everything going on, you should be playing the game more than enough to easily earn most of the missions. So guys, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below about the Laffey. If you have picked her up, let me know what you think about her. If you're planning on picking her up, let us know that too. Hope you guys enjoy. Have a wonderful Thursday, a wonderful rest of your week. Hope to catch you guys in the next one.